This manga is a dark fantasy story about survival, not of a hero, but of an entire people. It follows Dinelus, I hope I'm saying that right, a dark elf leader trying to get what's left of her race out alive. While the rest of the world has already decided they don't belong, there is no chosen one here, no prophecy, no promise of victory. Chapter 1 doesn't introduce a villain, it introduces a situation. And before this chapter ends, 12,000 people will survive, while more than 50,000 are erased from history. That's why chapter 1 matters, because it doesn't ask who wins, it asks what survival cost. This manga makes that clear immediately. Look at the very first panel of the manga. Dinelus isn't standing in defiance. She isn't being dragged to the ground. She isn't restrained. She's kneeling. Her posture is calm, almost ritualistic. Her shoulders are relaxed. Her hands are close to her body, not defensive, offered. Her weapon isn't raised, it's lowered, already removed from the situation. And her expression matters most. Her eyes aren't wide with panic, they're half lidded, resigned, focused. This isn't fear in the moment, this is fear that's already been processed. She offers herself, not just her life, but her body, her future, even her ability to have children, as if she's negotiating terms instead of pleading for mercy. This isn't violence happening, it's violence that has already been justified. From the first image alone, this manga tells us this world doesn't break people through force. It teaches them how to accept their own erasure as reasonable. As the chapter moves forward, notice how little time it spends explaining the world. Instead, it shows movement. Bodies pushing through rain, groups pressed together, the injured being carried, not left behind. No one is charging forward, everyone is moving away. The frame reinforces this constantly. Figures lean forward under exhaustion. Panels feel crowded but never chaotic, like space itself is running out. This isn't a retreat after a lost battle. This is a population trying not to disappear. The manga doesn't need to explain every loss. The cost is already visible in posture alone. Dinelus is introduced as a leader in a very specific way. She's injured, bleeding, exhausted. But whenever decisions are being made, she's centered in the panel. When she points, people move. When she stops, others wait. When she speaks, the surrounding noise fades. Her authority isn't theatrical, it's functional. The framing never exaggerates her strength, it emphasizes her responsibility. Wide shots show people depending on her direction. Close-up shows the toll that responsibility is taking. This manga doesn't introduce her as a hero. It actually introduces her as someone who cannot afford to collapse yet. Leadership here isn't inspiration, it's endurance. When the chapter explains dark elf communication magic, notice how restrained it is. There's no spectacle, no visual flourish, no sense of wonder. The magic exists to move information efficiently. That choice matters. Magic in this story isn't about fantasy, it's about logistics. It exists because survival at this scale requires coordination, and that becomes clear when Dinelus volunteers to stay behind. Not to win, not to prove strength, to delay. The panels isolate her more and more as the group moves on. The distance between her and the others grow. She becomes smaller in frame, less protected by numbers. Every second she buys means more people reach the river. The river sequence is where the chapter truly slows down. The rain stops. On paper, that should be good news. Visually, it's a problem. With the rain gone, the terrain is clear. The water levels drop. The group becomes visible. Wide panels show figures struggling against the current. Smaller panels isolate individual bodies, slipping, losing footing, being pulled under. This is no longer strategy, it's physics. Bodies versus water, strength versus exhaustion. And this is where perspective begins to shift. When the orcs appear, notice how they're framed. They don't burst into the panel. They don't dominate the composition. They observe. Close-ups focus on their eyes, steady, alert, focused. Someone says, "Look at their eyes." That line matters. These aren't monsters rushing to kill. These are soldiers assessing a situation. The decision being made here isn't whether to attack, it's how many people can realistically be saved. The manga challenges the reader's assumption without speeches, only restraint. Gustav's introduction is intentionally understated. No speech, no threat, no declaration. He lifts Dinelus himself. That choice defines him. Power in this story isn't introduced through dominance, it's introduced through action. Quiet, practical, necessary. He doesn't announce who he is. What he does tells us enough. When Dinelus asks how many survived, the composition shifts again. The background empties. The space feels hollow. 12,000. The manga lets the number sit. Then it reminds us what came before. 70,000. This isn't framed as a victory. No explanation can soften that number. When Dinelus pledges herself, the manga deliberately mirrors the opening panel. She kneels again. The posture is almost identical. The framing echoes the beginning. At the start, she knelt to survive. Here, she kneels because survival now requires belonging. Her offer isn't gratitude, it's calculation. If her people are to live, they must belong to someone powerful enough to protect them. And the manga refuses to romanticize that realization. Gustav rejects the premise of her vow. He doesn't accept ownership. He reframes responsibility. You and your people are my people. It's comforting, not because it's kind, but because it's practical. Protection comes with structure. Belonging comes with obligation. And the chapter ends without resolution. If survival requires belonging, what happens to the people no one claims? This was only chapter 1.